Welcome to Level with Emily Reese. This is Rob Kovacs on the piano. He goes by 88-Bit online, and he does absolutely fantastic arrangements of 8-bit music on keyboard. We started off our conversation by talking about how he made the decision to record himself in the first place, playing his arrangements and putting them online.
There was like an aha moment, but it was like a bit of a process leading up to that. In like 2010, I made an arrangement of Airman on piano, which took forever. Like trying to find a MIDI that was accurate. That's all I knew how to do it at the time. Trying to find a MIDI that was accurate, learn all three voices from the original score, and then make it a piano arrangement and put it on YouTube. Took a while, but I was really excited about it, and it got some notoriety. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this with all the Mega Man 2 soundtrack. And I hadn't made another one since. So the songs in that game are so difficult for the piano. It's just so fast, so syncopated, and there's we were talking about Bach a little bit beforehand, but each voice is like Bach on steroids.
Yeah.
It's just it's like rock rhythmically, so intense, and but it's really challenging and fun to play. But I hadn't succeeded at making the whole soundtrack yet. And then a piano student of mine, wanted to learn Bloody Tears from Castlevania 2. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, let's do it. So I found a decent MIDI, and I made together we made an arrangement that fit his level of playing. And I was like, man, I could do a really cool arrangement of this if I just take all the voices and play them as is. You got doubled octaves in there, and then I can thicken it out with more, doubling more octaves. But the notes themselves, without even really have to change them, sound great on piano. So made up a quick arrangement, and then at that moment I was like, oh man, I should just do all the games, or not just limit it to Mega Man 2. Let's do a bunch.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the moment. I was like, I'm just going to do as many as I can here. And it really took a couple years after that till I actually made on my next first video, which was of the Adventures of Lolo. Just kind of a random game. I never played when I was a kid, but got sick and was like, someone said you should play this game, so I started playing it and kind of just loved the music, especially the ending theme, which I'd never heard of in my life, because the game, for one, is really difficult, and it's the same song every level until you beat the whole game, which is 50 levels. Then you get rewarded with this Latin inspired jazz type song that just kicks butt. I was like, man, people should hear this. That's one of the inspirations about this whole project is there's such great music in the NES era alone that is, if it's not from Mario, Zelda, or Mega Man, Castlevania, people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And if you've never played the game, if you weren't a gamer, you certainly don't know about it. So one of the goals is to try and shed light on some of this lesser known music.
Yeah, I mean, I love you did some Marble Madness stuff. Talk to me about that. I loved that game. That was one of the few games from that era that I played a tiny bit of, because I didn't do a lot of gaming when I was that age, but I did play the tiniest bit of that, and that music is fabulous. So,
do you know if you played what? Do you know what console you played it on, or if you played it on the arcade?
I played it on an Apple computer.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what the music is from that, because the original was an arcade game. The music was composed by, it's mostly credited to Brad Fuller, from what I understand, but also a guy named Hal Cannon, who I know nothing about. I say this every time I talk about the game, but I can't find anything about Hal Cannon. He also did like Paperboy, which is a
nice,
popular BGM song. So if anybody knows anything about Hal Cannon, I would love to get in touch with him and interview him or talk to him. Brad Fuller, unfortunately, has since passed away, but the music is fantastic, and it's originally from an arcade game. One of the first arcade games to use a DX7 Yamaha-style sound chip, and I feel like they really just were having fun with the sounds that they could make, and a video game never quite sounded like this, and no video game soundtrack quite sounds like Marble Madness. I first heard it, though. I grew up with it, playing it on the Nintendo, which is a little different than the arcade version. Naturally, there's the limitations. You can't get all the voices. You can only up to 3 notes. So they took out a bunch of notes. And also interesting is the person who made that port is David Wise, legendary, famous composer, Donkey Kong Country, Battletoads, all kinds of random stuff. RC Pro-Am, another favorite game of mine. So he did that port, and it's really interesting how he changed some of the music from the original. Like, even some of the melodies are a little different. But he put his own spin into it, so I don't know. That music always just kind of stood out to me, especially level 3, which is just like wild and like sinister sounding. And like circus gone mad. And it works so great on the piano. It's like a contemporary piano piece, and I love playing. I love talking about it. I love playing it, and I'm hoping to get an official recording of it very, very soon.
Nice. So talk to me a little bit about your setup. I love how you shoot your videos, and you've got a neat little studio going on there. So talk to me about, how all that goes.
Yeah, I've got my baby grand piano here, which I'm hoping to upgrade soon. It is very limited. As far as classical playing, it's a Baldwin from 1980, and it is. I hate it.
Yeah.
the detail that I'm trying to get does not quite come out on this piano. But as far as the videos go, I've got 2 mics set up here, fairly close mic, which is a type of sound I like, and I think it fits well for the NES arrangements, similar to like a Glenn Gould Bach type sound. Not the kind you'd hear for like a Rachmaninoff, or classical romantic style, where it's more kind of washy, and you're getting the room sound as well. I like a pretty close mic sound, so you can hear all the detail. And then video-wise, just I shoot the video and the recording at the same time, and then I do make mistakes at times, so I can then go back and punch in a mistake and fix that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
I'm not perfect here, but I want the representation of the music to be as perfect as I can make it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they're really complex melodies to play. This is difficult stuff with intricate counterpoint. So talk to me about the complexity there.
I could talk about that all day. So I'll say real quick, just the limitation of the NES shapes how composers made their music. So I'll talk about that real quick because I think it's important to know. Essentially, you have 5 voices that a composer could work with, or 5 channels. One of them is like just a sample channel, like really crude samples. So that wasn't used too often. Once in a while it was for music, but it was pretty much not used. The other channel is noise. So it's just, no pitch, just white noise type sounds. And then you have the other 3 channels that can make a pitch, 2 pulse channels and a triangle channel. So they can really only play up to 3 notes at once. So a lot of composers use a melody, one channel for the melody, 1 channel for the bass, and then 1 channel for a counterpoint melody. That's how it's most often used. So they jammed a lot of music, though, in those 3 channels. What was also unique is one of the earliest examples of computer music, certainly commercially consumed computer music. So they didn't have to worry about human playability. They could pretty much make the NES chip play as fast as it wanted.
Right.
It could make leaps as wide as you want, voice crossing however you want. It could do. It was a lot of power for a composer to not have to worry about the pesky human playability problem. So trying to rearrange it so anyone who plays early video game music you're going to get pretty good trying to play this stuff at speed. It's definitely a challenge. But that's also what draws me to it, is trying to find a way to get all 3 voices in just 2 hands. Usually the tricks are, a lot of times I'll end up that middle voice trying to use both thumbs to kind of get that middle voice.
So let's talk about just your life as a pianist, because you're classically trained. So talk to me about when you started playing and where you went to school, and then we'll go from there.
I started playing really young, just tinkering around. I was like 3 or 4. My sister also played. She was 12 years older, and she knew like 5 songs. Like Music Box Dancer, Moonlight Sonata, and I loved when she would play, and that inspired me. So I took lessons. One of my first jobs was playing for tap dance and ballet classes, and I was like 14.
Nice.
So I picked up to it pretty quick, and I definitely liked both rock music and classical music. So I took from different teachers growing up, learning a little bit of both. And then I went to college for music at Baldwin Wallace University, and ended up studying music theory because I wasn't sure if I wanted to compose or if I wanted to be a performer. And I liked theory, so that was kind of in the middle.
Yeah,
I could kind of learn a little bit of everything. And then a big moment in my life in my senior year of music, or senior year of college, was learning about Steve Reich and performing some Steve Reich music.
Yes.
I had found out about the piece Piano Phase. I hated it at first, and then I understood what was going on, and then I was like, "Oh my God, this is the most incredible thing I've ever heard."
Let's talk about that for a minute. And there's a video of you playing it too. Steve Reich is a minimalist composer, and so talk a little bit about what that means and what is so unique about that piece, because it's cool.
That piece is So it's called Piano Phase. It's for 2 pianists on 2 different pianos. They both play the same 12-note pattern, and it loops. And then one person is instructed to speed up ever so slightly, so they kind of get out of sync or out of phase, and then they lock back in 1/8 note apart. And then as a listener, you hear like almost an echo effect first, and then that process keeps happening. They get further and further apart. You hear different resulting melodies happening, and it's the same thing over and over again, but the relationship is constantly changing.
But it's made for 2 pianists, so...
Yeah, it's made for 2 pianists. And up until then, I always loved the idea of hand independence, so I would try and learn different parts of rock songs, like the bass and like a guitar part, try and mix them together. Or just simply like blues, like you're playing a bass line, solo with the right hand that could do something totally different. So hand independence was really interesting to me. And the idea of trying to do that on both hands, I was like, well, that's like the ultimate in hand independence. So I practiced it and kind of figured out how to do it. And eventually was like, okay, it's my senior year. I'm gonna perform this, and reached out to Steve Reich's manager to see if has this been done before, and he said, no, you can promote it as like a world premiere. It's like, all right, I'm gonna do that. And then my friend Gary was like, you should ask Steve to come. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. He's like, yeah, do it. I was like, all right, fine. So I did, and then long story short, we ended up raising money and got Steve Reich to come out to our school for a day, and it was like a whole Steve Reich day. We made he did talks with students, and it was a whole event. We did a whole concert. We also played music for 18 musicians.
Nice.
Which was my thesis. So my senior recital blossomed into something way beyond that I was ever ready for. It was the most nerve-wracking. I mean, I've never been more nervous in my life. So, but yes, it is that video is on YouTube, and I'm very, very proud of it to have done something like that. And I think it does. It's important in my pianistic story, I guess.
So you said that was really important to you, that discovery. Steve Reich's music or minimalism in general, or?
Specifically Steve Reich's music.
Yeah.
I like minimalism in general, but I'm not a huge fan of Philip Glass.
Interesting.
Yeah, I respect his music. I don't find myself listening to it as much. They come at it from different, they worked together and they influenced one another. And Philip Glass comes at it from a different perspective, and I find the repetition less engaging, whereas Steve Reich's music, it's about the relationship of at least two things. So there's always some sort of relationship happening. Mm-hmm. And that is never static. That is constantly evolving.
Before Steve Reich, who were some of your loves in terms of composers that you loved to play, I would say?
Certainly Chopin. Absolutely love Chopin. I enjoyed playing Liszt and Rachmaninoff, but didn't really love it. Scriabin, I absolutely love. Absolutely love Scriabin. Prokofiev is a lot of fun, very challenging.
Yes.
Ravel is one of my absolute favorite, probably my favorite romantic composer. I don't play enough of his stuff, but Ondine and the whole Gaspard de la Nuit is probably my favorite piano piece of all time.
Well, it's apparently the hardest, right?
That's right. It does have that reputation.
It does. What do you feel about that? Scarbo, that movement Scarbo.
I've never played it, so I can't, I don't know. I can't say. I mean, there's definitely plenty of hard piano pieces. I have never played it, though. I can't say. The amount of control necessary to pull off something like Ondine with all the flowing arpeggios while you have a melody going on at the same time. Or something like Les Gibet with this background bells happening and just the depth, of the depth that's composed in the music that you have to, as a pianist, create. You can't just play everything. Obviously, you can't play everything the same volume, but you have to give the sense that there's multiple things happening. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That takes a lot of control for sure.
I want to talk about this game that you're writing music for because I got to listen to some of it, and it's great. And
thank you.
You're writing it on a really great keyboard too, like a super like epic, like just vintage Prophet keyboard. So talk to us about that and writing this music.
Yeah, so the game I'm scoring is called Straylight, and I'm exclusively writing it, almost all the music using a Prophet 5, which is one of the first polyphonic synths so it can play up to 5 notes at once. Pretty wild. And it has just a great sound, a great warm synth sound, and it's just magic. Like I've had it now for, I don't know, about 10 years.
Wow.
And I don't know how to use it. I'm still figuring things out. But that's what's fun about it. Like you do something different. You're like, oh, there's this sound I never could have imagined.
Yeah.
So that's part of the fun of it. And writing for VR is really fun because it's kind of like uncharted territory. This game in particular is mostly you're kind of in space. It's a really fun game. You kind of get to fly around space and kind of fling yourself using this, what we call the Straylight. This thing kind of propels you in this abstract space world. And, motion sickness is a problem in VR, but the fact that you're in space and there's not like a wall whizzing by you,
Yeah.
You just feel like you're floating, and there's no motion sickness, which is we're really excited about.
Yeah.
But there's also no like Foley or like sound, like atmosphere sounds that I have to worry about. So I can pretty much take control of all the sound. Yeah, there's sound effects, when you pass by some bigger objects that emit some sound, which I'm doing as well. But I've got a lot of freedom and control to make the music. And one of the inspirations you just talked about Hip Tanaka recently and Metroid.
Yeah.
From what I've read, his concept of that game was the music was the sound of the world, the sound of the game. That was the atmosphere. And I thought that was such a unique idea. And that's kind of my mindset for this. So each new level, each world, the sound of the world is the music.
How did you get connected with the team making the game?
There's 5 of us. 2 of us, 3, me and 2 other guys, Ben Barr and Len Ganley worked on films together.
Oh,
we did
cool.
a lot of 48-hour film projects, which is a blast.
Wow.
And I recommend it to anyone, because especially if you have like a perfectionistic mindset or something, this will force that out of you. Especially the music part, because you get the final cut maybe a few hours or the last day, and you have to shove everything in the last minute. You can write stuff throughout the process, but you don't get to see it until the end.
Oh, wow.
So that was great training for me and a lot of fun. So that's how the 3 of us met. And then Len was kind of the linchpin for the whole group because he met Dan Siri and Chris Herbison, the 2 programmers who've been doing games for a while. And he brought me and Ben in to the team for a global game jam. Similar idea. You get 2 days to make a game. And Straylight was the first thing that we did, and made like a concept level, and I had made a song real quick, and they're like, okay, this is really cool, let's develop this into something further.
So, I mean, obviously you're a gamer. I mean, are you gaming these days to keep busy, or are you too overwhelmed?
Yeah, the only gaming I do is really NES stuff. Once in a while I'll sit down and play some random NES game. I've been playing, someone recommended Goonies 2. Someone in my Discord was like, you should check out Goonies 2. It's like, all right. And I've been having a little fun with that. I stay away from all like the new stuff. I have a Super Nintendo and an Oculus Quest, and that's it.
Nice.
I definitely would get sucked into the bigger games like Half-Life 2 just took so much time back of my life back in the day that I was like, okay, I need to not play too many games. So I love games, absolutely, and I would like to play them more, but I don't play that many right now, which is all right.
So what's next for 88-bit then? What are you working on? What do you want to post in the future?
I'm working on the entire Final Fantasy 1 soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting because, it's Nobuo Uematsu, and it's his first Final Fantasy game. So you hear the genesis of a lot of the other music from the series. I'm excited to give that music some light. And then I have quite a backlog of games I want to do. Bomberman, Bubble Bobble, Zelda 2. Oh my gosh, I could just Double Dragon. There's a lot.
Yeah.
But one video at a time is the idea.
You mentioned earlier, that when you went to college, you chose theory just because it was a good middle ground between, performing or composing. Because I did my master's in music theory, and so, for me, when I started studying 20th century, atonal theory and set theory and matrices and all that stuff, that made me fall in love with music from that era. And I didn't ever anticipate enjoying learning any of that. So I'm curious if you had any aha moments like that as a theorist, or any favorite eras that you liked to study music from, or any of that.
I really studied a lot of minimalism once I figured that out, or at least a lot of Steve Reich. And what's interesting about that is you can hear the theory, and that was kind of his thing. You can hear the process, what's happening.
Sure.
Everything was up front. It wasn't so hidden. You can watch a pattern change and build up over time, and you can hear the relationship change. That was really cool. I did kind of love the concept of 12-tone music. I don't love any 12-tone music, but I do love the concept. The goal, was to make music atonal or pantonal. Was really, I guess, what Schoenberg thought.
Yeah.
Every note is a tonic.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone hears it that way.
I know.
We just hear it as atonal. But I do love 12-tone. I did, as a songwriter, I did take a 12-tone row and make a song out of a 12-tone row, which I call the 12-tone song.
That's amazing.
It's not recorded yet. I've played it live. And basically what I'm doing is taking a row and then layering it 5 times to make different chords. So it's just a series of major 9 chords.
Nice.
Throw a melody on top of it, and it works. It follows the rules, and it kind of works.
Nice. That's awesome. I hope you record that someday.
I will soon. I would say I've gotten to work with a lot of people and meet a lot of people through the 88-bit thing.
You've traveled a lot, too, and gotten to perform at places and such, right?
Yeah, I've gotten to travel quite a bit at different conventions, MagFest, PAX South, VGM Con we were talking about earlier. The very first con I did, I got to meet Raheem Jarbo, or Mega Ran, who is a nerdcore rapper and just an amazing, brilliant person.
Yeah.
And I met him at a con in Classic Game Fest in Texas, and I had heard about him. I heard about him because somebody wrote about him in a paper. There's an event called NACVGM, but stands for the North American Conference for Video Game Music, which is great. It's once a year. It's very academic, and it's a chance for theorists and musicologists to present their papers on video game music. So somebody wrote a paper about Mega Ran. I was like, wow, who is this? So I got to check him out. And we were doing the same con, and I introduced myself, and I was like, hey, I noticed you don't have a band. If you want anybody to play with you, I'd be happy to jump in. I learned some of your music. And he's like, all right, okay. Probably a little skeptical of who I was. He saw that I was on the list and everything.
Yeah.
Performers, but he had me come up and play with him for one of his freestyles, and then stayed on for his last track, and then that started our relationship. I ended up going on tour with him this past fall, all the way on the West Coast, which was awesome, with him and another guy named Sky Blue. And I'm working on a record with him now. He's got a record called Forever Famicom, and he's doing a re-release of that.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty great. Just having the chance to work with him and a lot of other musicians and composers and YouTubers. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
The community is pretty great.
Absolutely. Like the best community that I've ever met or been a part of. It's from the very first con, the first MagFest. It was just everyone is so warm and welcoming and just wants to have a good time. And we all share a love of video games and video game music. And it's really a great community.
Rob, thank you so much for the chat. It was so great to talk with you.
You're so welcome. I'm so honored to be on your show.
Thanks for listening to episode 143 of Level with Emily Reese. You can learn more about Rob Kovacs, and I highly recommend you do in a couple of spots, robkovacsmusic.com and 88bitmusic.com. The playlist you'll find at patreon.com/level. I'm Emily Reese. Sam Keenan is our producer. Say hi, Sam.
Hi.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Level with Emily and learn more about us at levelwithemily.com, made possible by Adam Selvage at Tiki Web Services and composer Brad Gentle. Level with Emily Reese is a production of June Media, Inc.